everyone. Welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, the podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, and game masters with your questers Josh and Dan. I am Dan.
And I am Josh.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things onomatopoeical. More on that later. If you have any questions for us, please drop us a line at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. And we're going to talk about the very first interlude and the very first adventure in the Blades Compendium Adventure series. So we're going to do a deep dive on that one. This is our This is part 2 of our 6-part series. Anyway, initial thoughts on any and all of this, Josh, or I think, in fact, you want to talk about what Lou had to say.
Yeah, we talked sort of broadly about Blades a couple of episodes ago, and there were portions in that where I may have, Jenner said, maybe Lou can shed some light on this, because I know Lou listens to the show and will occasionally post in the official Earthdawn group on Facebook with his thoughts on things and like perspective from stuff back in the day. And if we raise particular issues or questions, we'll try and address them the best that he can.
Yeah.
He did have a couple of things to comment on about Blades that I kind of want to talk about here, because they do relate to things that we were talking about last time. First off, he said that he thought that the episode was a great introduction and couldn't wait for future episodes focused on the individual adventures. But regarding the interludes, and this is quoted now directly from his post, they were not part of the original outline and plan for the books. It was only after I'd received and read through all of the drafts of the adventures from the authors that I realized that for the book to really be useful, we needed to provide a bit more information and structure. In short, the adventures provided a way for the characters to learn the research knowledge, but we also needed to provide a way for them to learn the test knowledge. That is to say, the research knowledge being the answer and the test knowledge being the question.
Yeah.
That's aside from me. But we also needed to provide a way for them, and provide ways to guide them to the individual adventures. That would be the job of the interludes, which I ended up writing during the development of the book. So the interludes are all pretty much Lou's work.
Mm-hmm.
Figured out that, we need this after other stuff had come in.
Yeah.
His second point here is addressing the discussion that we had about the nature of the curse and how that could potentially be a difficulty or obstacle or hang-up depending on the group.
Mm-hmm.
There was some controversy among the writers regarding the curse. I remember meeting with several of them at Gen Con, probably 1994, but maybe 1995, and when I asked who had concerns about the curse, they all raised their hands. I don't recall the specifics, but I do remember feeling at the time that the curse would provide additional motivation for the characters to continue learning about the Blades, which is why we kept it. I think the idea being that once they discover there's a curse, the only way to break it is to sort of follow it through. That if they didn't continue to learn about it and learn through that how to break the curse, then they were sort of dooming themselves and anybody else that they dealt with. We ended up toning down the curse from the original plan, which I don't recall the specifics now, and tried to provide a lot of GM advice for how to handle the curse in their campaign without overly penalizing the PCs. The book was pretty well received overall, so I always assumed we did a good job on that front. And we did talk about that there was actually some decent discussion in the book itself, talking about sort of approaching the curse. That is something that certainly for its time, I think actually was pretty good. If we talk about going in the context of things like session zeros and safety tools and the ongoing sort of discussion of the game as a collaboration between players and game masters, you very easily can do games that have things like the player characters being cursed and things like that. You just always need to be a little bit cautious or judicious in how you handle that and present that to the players, where they don't necessarily feel like they're being punished or that the GM is out to get them. Mm-hmm. The purpose is, here is an obstacle. This is providing us with a really cool story opportunity, an adventure opportunity that is, in a way, like rewarding you with a pretty significant magical item, pretty powerful magical item, and really playing into the themes of Earthdawn and the history and the past and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And given that it was 1994 or 95, whatever year it was, that I think the book actually kind of addressed that pretty well for the time. Obviously now 30 years later, we have a lot more experience and a different perspective on that sort of thing. But again, it's not that I have a problem with the curse. I think the curse is like a really cool idea and plays really well into the themes of the adventures and magic items, and it makes things more interesting overall. It's just, hey, here's a potential pitfall. If you're not careful, you might get some resentment as a result. So thank you, Lou, for the insights.
Absolutely. Glad we can bend your ear.
Hopefully these further episodes will continue to entertain and enlighten all of you.
Exactly. And Lou, by all means, chime in anytime. We love your feedback. We will incorporate it because you're still here for us to ask. And that's the beautiful thing. that is the beautiful, beautiful thing.
One thing that struck me, now to talk about the specific things we're going to talk about here for tonight. Mm-hmm. One thing that really struck me kind of going over this material in preparation for this episode is how short the actual adventure itself is, relatively speaking. And that's kind of, I think, going to be the case that we're going to find for all of these. Mm-hmm. This one especially, though, is like really like straightforward and simple in terms of its plot structure, which shouldn't surprise me given that there are five adventures that are packed into this book that's only 106, 108 pages, something like that.
Yeah.
And considering that, the first 15, 16 pages of that are more broad discussion about the history of the blades and the stat blocks for them and like general advice for running things overall, not to mention like the fiction pieces and whatnot, there's actually not a lot of page space for the individual adventures. And now it's not that the adventures, I don't think, all have the same page count. I think some of them are longer than others, and it may be that this is the shortest of the adventures because it is the first one and relatively straightforward in terms of what the group is going. But that's like the initial impression that I had. Written by Robin Laws.
Always good.
Yeah. The individual adventures, there were 4 different writers on the adventures themselves. 2 of them were written by Robin, and then we've got 1 each from... I got to go back to the page here, unless you have it right there.
I don't.
Scrolling. Then Sam Witt, Tewin Woodruff. Sam, I don't recall whether he did anything else. Tewin, I recognize the name. And then the other one is...
one more.
Yeah, did a couple other things for them. And then the other is Nicole Lindroos, who's credited in here as Nicole Lindroos-Frine. Nicole, who I am rather friendly acquainted with, is one of the principals, one of the head folks over at Green Ronin, and so works with Steve Kenson. If you want to drop other names, and Chris Pramus. And so, Steve
Kenson writes the Expanse.
He also does Mutants and Masterminds, I think, is their superhero game. He also did Blue Rose, which is their like sort of romantic fantasy. Mm-hmm. Steve has worked with them for ages, and I think pretty much since the beginning of them. Is certainly because he was with he worked on True 20. Like he's been with them since the D&D 3rd edition days where everybody was doing their own D20 stuff. But Nicole had done a couple of other things for Earth Dawn previously. I didn't realize that she had written one of the adventures in here until I saw the credits earlier. But yeah, she's wonderful. So I've known her for years. Mm-hmm. And then with sort of the interlude structure, as Lou said, had provided that, and some of the more broad advice and so forth.
It's like layers of a cake. You put everybody has their own little layer. All 5 adventures. Robin, opening layer and the ending layer. So a nice little bookend there on those adventures. And then Lou figured out this cake needs something between the layers like frosting. And so you just put the frosting in between this 5-layer cake, man.
As long as it's not fondant, because fondant is nasty.
Exactly. No, frosting is much better.
All right, so...
Frosting is all kinds of good. So, basically, our first interlude, and I agree with you that the beginning adventure needs to be fairly straightforward. I can't say fairly simple, because I don't want to use the word simple with anything to do with Earth Dawn. But very straightforward and very condensed. That way you get them where they need to be and you lay the groundwork. That's why a foundation for a house, or the foundation, the bottom layer of the cake, needs to be the strongest one. And so get it in, get it out, get it done, go. And then you've got time between the adventures to do something else if you'd like to do so. Type some threads, some side quests. And then by interlude number 2 and adventure number 2, you've got more time to let all those adventures ideas breathe, get the characters involved some more, and let them ROLE play their way through everything, and develop the characters and develop the legends and develop the horror and all of this stuff. You have time to let everything play out. So for our first one, our first interlude is Secret of the Runes. And this is specifically designed on purpose that can take place in any location, because where you're going to start your adventure off is entirely up to the game master. Where either you've already been, where the last session ended up, doesn't really matter. This is where you can lay the groundwork, and since you don't have to move your party to this place to let it happen, they're already there when it happens. Then they get to move on purpose. This is their impetus to get going on this whole thing. And in this interlude, there are 3 things the player characters have to learn. It takes up like a page in the book, so it's real quick. The daggers were created in Carafod. Number 1. Number 2, an expert on Carafod is a member of the Fists of Fod. And number 3, where to find the Fists of Fod in the Dolores Mountains. That's it. Pretty simple. Take your time, lay all that stuff in. Go.
I really like how, for this interlude, like it starts off with, they need to learn these things. If they don't learn these things, then they're not going to be able to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And then the interlude then goes on to basically provide the method by which, or methods multiple, that they could potentially learn this information. Obviously, there's the standard item history / weapon history test, because this was first edition.
Yep.
And so that's from there that they can get those initial, like that initial test knowledge, that initial question.
Yep.
But then also, here is a knowledge test that you can make if you've got appropriate knowledge skills. To get some clues as to what you might need to determine. The item history test on its own is just going to say, you need to learn the name of the daggers, or whatever that question is. Yeah. But it on its own doesn't really provide a whole lot of clues, but it gives a really nice description of the daggers and looking at them. And it's like, okay, if any character has read and write language orc, then they can recognize the runes as a unusual style of written orc, so they can make a test against a difficulty 9, which isn't super difficult.
No.
To maybe learn about the writing on the daggers, and then it goes through the various like success levels, where as long as you succeed, you get enough to point you in the right direction. Like if you actually get an awful result, a poor result, which is not even just a simple failure, but like a really bad failure, you completely misread what is on there. But each success level grants you additional information. And I think this is really good. We have done this sort of thing in the Legends of Barsave adventures, where there are knowledge tests or whatever that need to be done. If there is information that is critical to advance the story, you don't get that key information behind a test. In this case, they technically do, because if you roll less than a 9, you don't really learn anything, or you don't learn anything as the character. But there's nothing at that point that says, well, even if I can't translate it, I recognize this as orc. Let's find somebody who is maybe better versed in it that might be able to. So it's not like super gated. It just might be, oh, you can't figure it out, but you can find somebody who does.
Yeah. It doesn't stop you.
Yeah.
It just delays you.
And then the higher success levels provide more context and more detail that maybe enhance the experience and what you're learning, and provide some foreshadowing and hints about what you may learn later on.
Yeah.
On a good success, you see that the word 8 appears multiple times in the poem, as does the word hour. And that it seems to be like, you don't know exactly what it says, but it seems to be this sort of thing. And if you get an even better result, then you can actually just translate the poem, and it provides the full poem there. And then, like, even better, it's like, not only do you translate it, you recognize that the style of the language used means that it comes from this time period.
This and so, yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, that's an extraordinary success, which in first edition against a difficulty 9 would have been like a 22 or 23 result, I want to say, like somewhere in that ballpark. I know that against a 9, an excellent success was an 18, because obviously excellent success was the armor defeating hit, and for those like sort of common physical defenses, you started to remember what those target numbers were. And so it would have been like another, not full 9 beyond, but like 5 or 6 points beyond. So like a 22, 23, somewhere right around there, which again, this is not for brand new first circle characters, but you're not likely to have read and write language where you are likely to get a great result. But of course you could have a troubadour. You could have somebody who has the read and write language talent with that language, with orcs, with orc learned on it. There's not enough here for you to learn orc for the talent, but if you already know it, then you can apply that to kind of go there. So you just get this skill tree, essentially this result level saying, hey, here's information, here's a little bit more information, here's a little bit more information. And then if they figure out, like if all they get out of this is that it says Carafad, then hey, that opens up a whole other list of skills that they could potentially use, like orc history or orc lore or other things that might relate to Carafad. And hey, here's more information that you could potentially learn about Carafad and like what you can recall, not anything relating specifically to the Blades, but at least you'll know, oh yeah, they were this old orc kingdom that went defunct before the Scourge, and they're located down in this part of Barsave and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
If either because they didn't get high enough result levels or they don't have the appropriate skills or whatever, there is then like the third option. Okay, we're going to go and find someone who can tell us. And there's an NPC handily provided here who can provide that. And then basically says she can sort of provide the information that is available through the regular skill checks, but then also is like, there's somebody who probably can give you a lot more information on this. And they are this person who is down here
with this group, go there.
With this group, pointing them in direction of where they need to go to find the person who would be able to answer the question.
Yes.
That they have been posed.
And that's that's where the role-playing aspect of this interlude comes into play. Because the interludes are mostly there for the characters to investigate, role-play, not necessarily roll the dice to solve some things, but some charisma checks, some familiarity, and so forth and so on. But it's the, as I said, they will meet the non-player character Scholar, Sarania, and for the 4th edition update, if somebody does have item history, it's helpful if it, because now the list is expanded for those who have item history. It's been rearranged. Troubadours, it's automatic. Weaponsmiths are automatic. Wizards, it's an option, and Gauntlet is an option, just to refresh everyone's memory. But I like the interlude, A, being short, and B, leads you into the direction of meeting Sarania, and you get to role play all this, and then she points you in the proper direction, to your point.
Yeah, and it could very easily be that you could substitute Sarania with some other sage or scholar type person that you have already introduced in your game. It's just, here's one that's available if you don't have one to drop in. There's no reason that you have to use her.
Yeah, we created one for you just in case you didn't have a name or a specialty or whatever. But being a pre-written adventure, why not provide you a quick NPC, maybe a stat block, and some dialogue that they're going to give you? Ta-da, run with it, go. So that leads you into adventure number 1, Bondbreaker. And this is designed for 6 to 8 adepts, 5th through 7th circle. My assumption is if you have fewer players, because nowadays, a little harder to meet people in person, fewer players, maybe even a higher circle would be allowed.
I don't even know for this adventure that is strictly required.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason that the circles are what they are recommended wise is because there's not much reason for groups to be investigating the use of these items before 4th circle. Because aside from spellcasters, again, in 1st edition, only magicians got thread weaving at first circle. Everybody else got thread weaving at fourth, and so couldn't really take advantage of thread items, of magic items before that point, which is also especially where these things require a group pattern to be worth anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're typically not going to have a group. This is an adventure that is intended for journeyman characters because the stuff that it interacts with is stuff that you're not typically going to get until you get to that point.
Yeah. They give you a circle of familiarity with the thread weaving at fourth circle. Now it's fifth at that point. But now you don't have to.
I still think that it is probably more likely that this is one that if you are going to be running it under 4th edition, that you would probably want to put a little bit later. Only because unless you're willing to stretch out the timeline of the campaign, of this story arc a little bit longer, because the higher adventures, the climactic adventures, are a lot more a lot more dangerous.
Yes.
Certainly with this one, it's not too difficult to scale the opposition to the player characters without too much difficulty, but this is still not an adventure that I would be tossing at, you know, first or second circle characters. I, you know, likewise would probably still wait till like 4th or 5th or something like that. Once the group has established themselves as a group and maybe has a true pattern and are dealing with that particular interaction of things.
Yeah. High third at the very least, but if you have, you know, 6 or 8 players, high third probably. Fewer players, definitely wait till 4th. And you can scale things for the bad guys. But by all means, if you're starting it at that level, at 4th circle for everybody, or the just crested 4th circle, stretch these out. Do something in between the 5 adventures and blades and really let them build up their legend, let them get some more experience and some ranks and some things, and go from there. So for Bondbreaker, you are in search of the first key knowledge, which is the item name, because that's what it always is in Earth Dawn, and the name of the weaponsmith. Not giving it away too much because it's the very first knowledge, first key knowledge that you need. You're seeking a tribe known as the Fists of Fod. We've talked about this in previous podcasts on purpose, so go back and listen to those episodes. And more often, you're searching for their advisor named Gnanagh, which is the onomatopoeia of this adventure.
Well, so it actually says on page 38 of the adventure that his name is pronounced Gnanagh.
Gnanagh. Okay. Still onomatopoeia. I didn't quite get that far. Or I forgot to write that part down.
Gnanagh is not an adept. It does give a little bit of background on him.
Yeah.
He's kind of bitter. He is the one that discovered the documents that sort of indicate that the family descended from ancient Carafod royalty.
Mm-hmm.
He's the elder brother. Moschtug is his younger brother and is more charismatic and thus ended up sort of being the leader and is also an adept, which Gnanagh has made Gnanagh a little bit more upset.
Yeah.
Cranky and irritable, and Gahad is especially likely to be triggered by slights against his abilities or the quality of his scholarship. So he's kind of not a particularly pleasant character.
No.
And so, like, kind of just looking at his numbers here to give kind of like an apparent scaling idea.
Yeah, yeah.
He's got several skills. Like, he's got a pretty decent smattering of skills. He's got like arcane mutterings. He's got battle shout. He's got charge and wheeling defense, melee weapons, missile weapons. Like, and these are all typically like in ranges of rank 3 to rank 6 in terms of his skill ranks. Yeah. So he's I mean, he's not a pushover. He's accomplished. Moschtug is a 6th circle cavalryman and 5th circle warrior. So he is a pretty handy adept.
Stout, yeah.
Fortunately, in the scale of things, he's probably not going to be a character that the PCs are going to be fighting at all, which for reasons we will get to shortly.
Later, yep.
And then there's also Orguk, who is the head of the Righteous Vipers, who is a 7th circle swordmaster and 3rd circle cavalryman.
Yep.
Because obviously Moschtug and Orguk are leaders of their respective clans. They are accomplished adepts.
Higher circles, yes.
You know, another reason why you probably would not, unless you're kind of changing things around a little bit, wanting to not throw rookie characters at them.
Yeah.
There's also sort of a generic orc scorcher slash, warrior.
Mm-hmm.
They appear to be skilled characters, not adepts. They're statted up in more of a more traditional like creature stat block as opposed to a full NPC stat block like Moschtug and the others are.
Yeah.
Physical defense of 8, decent armor of 10, but their death rating is only 43. Like their attack step is 14.
Darn.
They're tough, but they're not like super difficult.
Yeah, they're not invincible, but it's gonna be a fight if you decide to go that route.
And we don't have full write-ups for, but we also have stats for Tirag, who's Orguk's daughter and a fourth circle swordmaster, and Uvtug, who is Moschtug's son and the husband. So Tirag and Uvtug are the wife and husband that are being married to form the alliance between these two tribes.
Absolutely.
And they're fourth circle swordmaster and third circle cavalryman, respectively.
Yeah.
They don't even have full stat blocks. They've just got attribute steps listed. Because again, it's not expected that they, based on the storyline, are going to come into a situation where you're likely to need to have more than that.
Exactly. Because the rule in my group is that if you don't provide a stat block for them, if you don't build out stats for that, then that's the one person, the one NPC that's going to get killed because you didn't have stats for them and the party's going to interact with them and try to kill them. It's happened multiple times. That's why it's a rule. Anyway, since you're looking for, is it Gnanagh?
Yes.
Okay. You're looking for Gnanagh, and you will find him in the Copper Cauldron, which is a town. Not to be confused with the Black Quarry, which is where I thought, but because the Black Quarry is the wretched hive of scum and villainy. You'll find him in Copper Cauldron, little tiny town. It's, I think, also on a map in Blades. And based upon how the characters resolve this, because there's going to be a lot of chance to role play with Orguk and Moschtug and everybody else, and Gnanagh, there's a myriad of endings. And so it's not exactly a shoehorn adventure or a railroad adventure. This is a choose your own adventure, to quote the books from the 70s and 80s. So I want to get those done right. Make good decisions in this one. The party's going to arrive in Copper Cauldron in time for the wedding feast. And between finding out the questions and arriving here, you really could game master a lot of things. Like I said, side quests, encounters, whatever not. Build up the legend, get some more experience and so forth. Just get them used to the setting of Earth Dawn. You're going to be held up by 2 guards who ask you if you are Theron and what Scorcher band you're associated with, if you have any orcs in your party. To prove you're not marked, and this is where you get to perform your artisan skill. Again, more role-playing. It is suggested here that you do so. And, unless you really want combat to ensue with the guards, knock yourself out. Thoughts?
No real thoughts on that. A quick sidebar. Copper Cauldron does get a little bit of a reference in the Carafod book as part of the write-up for the Fists of Fod.
Yeah.
So if you are looking for more information on them, there's not a lot of it, but go back to our episode where we did talk about the Fists of Fod.
Yes.
Which is probably helpful for
all of this.
For all of this particular adventure, providing a little bit more detail. The general gist here to start off is that Copper Cauldron is the community that PCs will eventually find their way to.
Yeah.
In the adventure, when they're heading in that direction, it's like, oh, we're looking for the Fists of Fod. That will eventually lead them to Copper Cauldron because that's where the Fists of Fod are based out of. Like that's their town.
Mm-hmm. And there's a 2-page write-up in Blades, page 28 and 29, with a map for Copper Cauldron. So it is there. See how helpful they were?
Yeah, with kind of a basic map, some information on it, some what you might learn talking to the locals and interacting with the Scorchers that are there and stuff like that. Largely just a lot of the player characters arrive and the pre-wedding festivities are underway, and so there's not really much of a chance to talk to Gnanagh, but they can talk with members of the Fists, they can talk with members of the Righteous Vipers, and get a sense of what each thinks about the other, and get essentially some insight into the people and personalities that they are going to be interacting with a little bit more strongly later on in the adventure. But it's more like, hey, we're throwing a big party, join us for the party.
Yeah.
We'll talk business later.
Exactly. And this is where the Game Master gets to, introduce this town of roughly 24 buildings. And write up your own flavor text for this and choose to set the scene however you want. You want it to be a midday wedding, an evening wedding, knock yourself out, change it any which way you want to. The player characters are going to ask around or try to work their way to into the good graces with any of the of either tribe. Take your pick, or both. Try aim for the stars. Try and do both. There will be revelry. There will be carousing. This is impromptu wrestling matches. These are orcs after all. There will be wagers, entertaining them or entertaining the town. So all kinds of things. Eventually, you will be invited to the feast. So if you want to draw this out and really have some role-playing adventures and get the players used to developing their character some more, if it's not solidified for them already. I mean, they should be fourth or fifth circle by this point. So by all means, they should know who the characters are. But this is the chance for them to like flex, socially speaking. And I think that's a good opportunity.
Yeah, and it's not only a good opportunity because you should be doing more than just simple moving on to the next combat set piece. But one of the themes of this adventure, as it relates to the curse, really, is how the presence of the player characters and how their interactions and relationships with the people that they are interacting with are affected by the curse. And that all kicks off with this adventure. This is before the group has even actually woven any threads to the blades, but their presence with the blades, when they meet with Gnanagh, things are active enough. There's enough whatever going on to allow Betrayer, the horror that has cursed the blades and sort of has a bit of itself within their pattern, to activate the curse and allows Betrayer to influence Gnanagh, who's already has all of this bitterness and upset over what he may feel is his sort of rightful place as the elder brother in terms of being the proper king of Carafad, but his younger, more charismatic, more powerful brother is kind of taking that spot. And essentially Betrayer goes, without being like super blatant about it, but essentially all of a sudden Gnanagh goes, maybe I should kill my brother. The player characters will meet him during the feast.
Yeah.
When they meet him, that's when this thing happens. And it's not something the group will notice, but there's a nice little bit of sort of description of when the adventurers speak to him, a reaction occurs in astral space. The strength of his resentment and the power of his temptation to break the bonds of loyalty attracts the attention of Betrayer, feeds on his swirling ambivalent emotions, using the energy to curse the characters. The interaction with this NPC is what actually triggers the curse. It's not the initial weaving of the thread.
Yeah.
Gnanagh was already sort of primed to be in that position that makes that happen. So the fact that it happens in this adventure and the consequences of this are not immediately obvious that, something weird is going on, because it's fairly clear from the information that they can gather prior to meeting Gnanagh. The other members of the Fist of Fought are like, his brother humors him, but he's kind of like annoying and boring, and we don't particularly like him. And the Righteous Vipers, our chief talks to him a bit, so he must have something worth saying, but he's kind of like foul-tempered and rude. And so there's generally like this kind of negative impression that is given of this guy. And then when the characters meet Gnanagh, that is backed up by him being like, the last thing I want to do is to talk to a bunch of adventurers that I don't know. But this is kind of interesting. Yeah, I'm busy right now.
Yeah, better time and place.
I'll look at the blades later. Okay, great.
Enjoy the festivities.
Enjoy the festivities, role play. There's stuff about, what happens drinking Hurlg and how the player characters might impress the various orcs there if they're doing feats of bravery or stirring oratory or any number of, very similar to the stuff that's in that early chapter of Terror in the Skies, where the group is on the ship. Hey, here's all this kind of fun stuff that we can do on the ship to interact with these NPCs and build relationships with them.
Yeah, hull jumping.
Yeah, hull jumping, the knife game, all that sort of thing.
And I think for this, that you could even stretch it out further, that if you did engage in all of this revelry beforehand, and you did do some wagers and you won, or you did do some impromptu wrestling matches and you won, that perhaps one of these leaders might ask you to give a toast to the bride and groom. And I think that would be a nice way to also draw the player characters in and make them really role play. We've got a player in my group that used to be a thespian and can just pontificate to the nth degree in times like this without any prep. And he's fantastic. And yeah, so do that. Eventually, what's going to happen is Gnanagh is going to do something to his brother. And there will be a altercation, a scene, a happening at the banquet table. There will be, he's going to collapse, and there will be bedlam at the ceremony here when that happens. So the player characters can do a couple of things. You can give aid to the one who collapsed. You can try and calm down both tribes because they're going to start going at it. Or you can rescue somebody who's falsely accused because there will be accusations of flying. So this is the choose your own adventure part of the adventure. So Game Master, prepare for any and all of these, and it's going to rely on the player characters, the decisions they make, and the personalities of the NPCs involved as to which of those that they're going to possibly do. And since the bride and groom are going to be wed, this is the after banquet. The tribes, after all of this takes place, will begin to leave the town, and you can regain the trail to Gnanagh's place in the Righteous Viper's stronghold. And this is your inquiry, your tracking of Gnanagh if you've got a scout in the party, so forth and so on. Use your talents and your skills and so forth to figure out where he's going to go. Because eventually, you're still going to need to talk to him because he's like, yeah, I'm busy, time and place, come see me later. This is the later part. So can they fight their way? Because he's in a stronghold off into the mountains. So sneak in, talk your way in, fight their way in.
Before we get to that, one of the details is that Moschtug is poisoned. He collapses, and Gnanagh grabs one of the villagers at Copper Cauldron that was serving the feast and basically accuses them of being the one that poisoned him.
Yeah, the peon.
Distracting from the fact that he was the one that did it. And that's kind of what leads to, because the villager's like, no, we never did that. And the Fists of Thought are like, well, he's blah, blah, blah. And that's where the PCs could potentially intervene.
J'accuse.
To try and calm things down a little bit, maybe try and, talk to people or whatever. But if they're not able to settle things down, then some fights break out between the Righteous Vipers and the Fists of Thought and villagers.
Yeah.
And the accused villager gets dragged off and is essentially tortured unless something is done, is severely crippled. And then sort of as everybody's sleeping off their drunken brawls and whatnot, Gnanagh and...
Moschtug?
No, not Moschtug.
Okay.
Orguk, the leader of the Righteous Vipers, because they were the ones who conspired to poison him, decide we better get away now before Moschtug wakes up, because he's not dead, he's just unconscious, and figures out what's actually going on. So we're gonna skedaddle, and the Righteous Vipers likewise all take off. And so then when morning comes and Moschtug kind of comes around and they realize what's happened, they set out, and presumably the player characters either set out ahead of them or with them.
Yeah.
With the idea being, well, it seems like maybe a fight is likely to break out, but we still need to get the information from this guy. And so then they arrive at the Orguk's fortress.
Yeah. And it's a nicely laid out fortress. It's different in design than most people are going to assume, because you have to go vertical.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part.
Kind of a almost dragony kind of overhang up above that's got, it's like a little sort of cavern thing with, you need to climb up to get into it, and it's got a good view of the surrounding area, so it might be difficult to secretly infiltrate it. You need to track the Righteous Vipers back to it, which isn't super difficult if you've got anybody in the group, a scout or a beastmaster or an archer possibly.
Or you could ask around.
Yeah, it's only a difficulty 7 tracking test.
Yeah. Or, there's all those fresh footprints en masse that went, X way out of town. Follow that. But this is, again, where once you get to that stronghold, once you get to that fortress, are you going to fight your way in? Are you going to sneak your way in? Or are you going to talk your way in? Because you really still need to get all the information you can from Gnanagh. And so he's in there and you're not. That's, again, choose your own adventure, part of the adventure. What are you going to do to solve that problem?
So what you've got here is a situation where the player characters need to get to Gnanagh alive.
Yep.
So that he can provide them the information that they need for this to continue. But at the same time, there is a nasty fight a-brewing between the Righteous Vipers and their 30-odd soldiers, and the Fists of Fod and their 40 soldiers, along with Moschtug, who have come here.
Seeking revenge.
It does give a nice little write-up of kind of the situation that they find at the fortress. Talks about a couple of different ways, like, do they fight their way in? Do they sneak their way in? Do they talk their way in? Ultimately, they need to figure out how to get to Gnanagh.
Yeah.
In the midst of everything else that is going on.
Because if they dawdle too long, or they don't head it off at the pass, a fight is brewing.
Yes.
And they need to pick a side.
They need to pick a side, and the GM can massage things a little bit if the fight does end up breaking out, to have, like, Gnanagh be captured so that the group can talk to him, rather than, like, just dying in the fight. Because as it does say in the troubleshooting section in this last encounter, he needs to provide the information or the rest of this is not going to happen.
Yes.
You could sort of maybe rework things a little bit, that maybe there's another way that they could find it. But generally, the only thing that needs to happen is that Gnanagh needs to provide the information to the PCs.
Yeah.
His ultimate fate, whether he ultimately lives or dies, doesn't matter. He just needs to live long enough to give this information to the PCs.
Yes.
And when he finally sees the daggers, he knows pretty much right away what they are and what they mean and why what happened just happened. Oh, these are the daggers. They are cursed. They sever the bonds that hold name givers together and breed betrayal. They are weak, but they could still make someone like me push me over the edge. And it may already be too late for you.
Yes.
Because you've been carrying them, you are affected by this curse as well. The only way to break the curse is to follow it to its conclusion. Like laying out right there in the first adventure, hey, here's what's going on. Here's our story arc.
Yeah.
You've got to see this through.
Because the longer you put it off, the more bad things will happen.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. There are going to be trials. There is going to be bad things that may happen along the way. The only way out is through.
Yes.
Final words. You can ignore this task, never weave another thread to them, but doing so will mark you as small and petty beings like myself. And then he tries to kill himself.
Yeah. Because, he's in that frame of mind. There are brief but important alliances to be made in this adventure for the player characters. They could form an alliance with either Gnanagh, if they help him, Moschtug, Orguk, both sides of either one of the tribes, or both, if you really can form an alliance with maybe the not as important members of the Fist or the Vipers who can speak on your behalf to Moschtug or Orguk. Or both. If you endear yourself to both tribes at the lower levels, maybe you can find some friends in there. And so there's a lot of role playing going on, not a lot of dice rolls going on, but some, yeah, fair.
I wouldn't say that. Because there are plenty of opportunities through this. Like, it's not you as the players are just talking and stuff happens.
Yeah, no.
There are dice rolls. Like, if what they're going to do is to try and reduce tensions, then those are going to be charisma tests, interaction tests, or possibly using talents that might modify NPC attitude levels, or things like that.
Yeah,
there are going to be
social
tests
skills
for the various whatevers that they're doing at the feast and the festivities. What there may not end up being a lot of in this is combat. If the group is clever and gets out ahead of Moschtug and the Fists of Fod and gets to the fort early and manages to talk their way in, they could achieve their objective without a fight needing to really break out. Like there may not end up being any actual combat. There could be, like if things go badly at the fort, you could have a situation where the player characters need to fight their way in, either alongside the Fissifat or on their own.
Yeah.
Or sneak in. Like there is plenty of opportunity for dice rolling and mechanical interaction with things. It's just not something that is on some level required. It's similar to...
You stated it much better than I did.
Yeah. If we want to talk about Robin Laws, let's talk about Infected.
There you go.
This is another fantastic Robin Laws situation where it's like, hey, here's the situation. Here are the most common ways that the group might deal with it. There you go.
Yep. Yes.
Like there's no assumed solution to the problem. There's no railroad tracks that need to be followed in order for the group to achieve their ends.
Yeah.
Except that, okay, you need to go here because that's where the person is. This is the situation that's already going on there when you get there. And so you kind of need to navigate that situation. Something happens that you had no way of knowing was going to happen. How do we achieve our ends in the midst of this situation, this scenario that is going on?
Yeah.
And it like provides the framework. Here's the location. Here's what you need to know. Again, not a lot of detail in the sense of, okay, here's what happens next. Here's plot point A, plot point B, plot point C.
No.
Here's a bunch of stuff going on. And you as the GM can flesh that out. You've got a group that's like Fifth Circle, something like that. You know how they operate. You know what they're capable of. You may have a pretty good idea of what they're likely to do going into this situation and maybe be prepared for that. But here's the physical situation. Here are the stat blocks for the people that they will be interacting with.
Go.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Feels a lot less guided, a lot less on rails than, say, Mists of Betrayal or Terror in the Skies, which are both a lot more linear. While they have interesting things and some choices that can be made, they are a lot more linear in terms of going from like point A to point B to point C to point D. This one is, they go here, this thing is going on, this thing happens, here's how they might deal with it.
Yeah. This can jump from B to G to K to Q to, F.
When I was much younger, an adventure framework like this probably would have driven me up the wall because I would not have felt that there was enough guidance for me to run it.
Fair.
Because I did not have the experience running games or the improvisational experience as a game master. It doesn't lay things out for you. It just gives you the situation and trusts you to handle it yourself.
And know your players.
Yeah. Now I look at something like this and I go, yeah,
I can do this.
This is sort of the equivalent of like what one of my write-ups for a Gen Con adventure is.
Yeah.
Hey, here's the situation. Here's what's likely to happen. Just in terms of like the length and whatever, because I am a lot more comfortable with, I describe the situation. What do you do? Okay, I react to what it is that you're doing, or I call for rolls or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then I don't feel like I am constrained, or I am less likely to run into issues where the player characters are trying something that is not detailed as an option in the adventure scripting.
Yeah.
How is it that I'm going to deal with that?
Yeah.
This is an adventure framework style, a write-up that is a lot more, you're running your game. Let's give you the pieces that you need to do this scenario and let you kind of handle the rest.
Yeah. I agree.
We've looked at other stuff from Robin Laws. This is classic Robin.
I love that you can identify it by the writer. That's awesome to me. And I agree with you. This is not linear. Don't go in this direction.
Like I was saying, if we look at Infected, if we look at the other Robin Laws adventures in either Parlength Adventures or Thrall Adventures, I think he might have written one in either or both of those.
Fair. Yeah.
Here's the situation. Here are what I think are the tools that will be helpful for you to deal with it. Now deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's your scenario. You take care of the rest. And that's it. And I like that. So,
yeah,
because to your point, I'm more comfortable now that I've done this for a decade or two, that I could follow this framework without a problem, because it's the choose your own adventure. Here's, option A, B, or C, pretty much. Go with it. And then after you take one of those, then you do the next set, Oh, well, that has option A, B, or C. It branches off and branches off and branches off. So kind of go from there. Any further thoughts about this?
Yeah, just to kind of wrap up on that, this is another reason why I would not have Blades be an introductory adventure for Earth Dawn.
Yes.
This is not a hand-holdy sort of adventure thing. This is not an introduction. This is not a plot point style adventure that takes you along the garden path, so to speak. Here's the situation. You need to deal with it.
It's designed for higher circle characters.
Yeah.
And it's also designed for more experienced game masters who can roll with this rather than needing more guardrails along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I like this.
And it's not too much, it's just enough.
Yeah. It's a nice little like capsule scenario. It gets the information that needs to be gotten to the characters. They find out a little bit more than they bargained for.
Yep.
Here's what these things are. And they're cursed.
Yeah.
So the curse is what caused this whole thing to happen. And that is thematically, and it's a little bit of foreshadowing. And this whole situation, again, like is dealing with relationships and whatnot. There is plenty of opportunity for combat that happens later on.
Yep.
But at this stage of things, it's laying the groundwork for the themes that this adventure collection deals with.
It feels like if you did it just right, it could stretch into a double episode of a brand new TV show.
Yeah.
If you're not hooked at the end of this one, you're not going to want to do the rest of the show.
Yeah. There's enough information given here that you can actually run a nice couple of scenarios out of this. I think it's like in the wrap up in the loose ends at the end. The awards, it's like this is assuming that it's only going to be a single session.
Yeah.
But I could see this easily ending up being
2 or 3
a couple of sessions
yeah.
if you really wanted to like flesh things out and draw out more of the interactions and whatnot. But you don't need to. Like the amount that you do that would be something that would be completely up to the player characters.
Yeah, and pacing of the story is entirely what they're willing to not put up with, what they're willing to do, or how long they want to spend in this town doing these things with these NPCs. But yeah, feel it out. If you want to get it done, quickly, one session, great, done, wrap it up. If you want to draw it out, or the player characters want to draw this out and do all these interactions and do all these things and do all this planning and so forth, by all means, do it. All of this makes just a more robust story.
Yeah.
And I dig it. So until next time, folks,
strong start.
Go choose your own adventure for your legend.
Good night, everybody.
59. Stop.